Climate change. You've probably heard this word many times recently. Climate change, green technology. It used to be known as global warming. We've heard about recycling, all these other things, CO2 levels rising, sea levels, so on and so forth. What is this? What is climate change, and how should Christians look at it? That's what I'd like to talk to you about today. I'd like to first begin by explaining that actually climate change has two different positions about it. There are two groups of people that have drastically different positions. One group is more led by Republicans, people who are of the liberal way of thinking, and they view climate change as settled science, as something that is absolute and absolutely true, that this is happening, and that in fact the most important part is it's affected by humans. That is the key to their argument, is that the human effect in climate change is the most important effect. Then there's the other group of people. It's the conservatives, it's the Republicans, which many do agree that the climate is changing and the earth is warming, but they're saying that this is overblown, that that the science is not so-called settled on this, that yes, there is an effect of CO2 into the atmosphere and on the ozone, but that the reality is that it's not human caused as much as the other side tends to say that it is. The reality is I'm not going to tell you about climate change today. I will not be telling you what is the correct position and what is the wrong position. I want to ask about Christians. I'm not going to argue about whether something is fact or not fact, but I just want to look at this from a Christian point of view. Before I do that, I want to explain that there is a danger of making climate change into a religion, and this is what we tend to see on the farther left side of the political aisle. And it looks a lot like paganism. The religion of climate change it looks almost like pantheism. There are some people that have even said, if we don't sacrifice, if we basically have said something like, if we don't sacrifice to the gods, they will use nature to destroy us. No, that's not literally what they said, but the words are usually like, well, the seas are rising, and it's the sea that is punishing us for mistreating it all this time. And it basically boils down to, if we don't sacrifice to the gods, then nature will kill us. If we don't bow down to nature, then nature will kill us. We have to be very careful with that sort of thinking, because it can really quickly move from taking care of the environment to worshiping nature, and even getting to the point of hating humanity, where you might see those memes on the internet where somebody posts a picture of like, if humans didn't exist, and it's sort of this beautiful world. The reality is it's not like that. And in fact, this is where I'd like to start from. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 15, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. This is called the garden mandate. So God gave Adam, the first man, a responsibility to take care of nature. This means that nature is not separate from us. It's not something that, if we didn't exist, would do better. No, we are the key component to nature. We are the ones who must control it, who must subdue it. Because God also told Adam to subdue the earth, work and keep the garden. This is very important. So God's first job for man was to take care of the world that God created for him to live in. This is extremely important, because that defines the way that we look at the world. The world is not just a place that we live in, that God put us in, and that we could just kind of do whatever we wanted, but actually we need to take care of it. That was given to us from Adam. It was passed on to us, this responsibility to take care of the world, to subdue it, to lord over it, to be God's ministers over the environment that we live in. So, I'd actually like to use an example right now. Think about plastic for a second. How do we use plastic? Is it the most efficient way that we use it? The invention of plastic basically revolutionized the way that we live, work, and consume products. However, the convenience of plastic also causes a problem of increased waste. Before the creation of plastic, people usually used more natural materials. Things that were more biodegradable, paper, maybe wood, things that could decompose. But plastic is durable, versatile, and it's very easy to make a lot of different products from it. And as a result, the global production of waste has significantly increased, with plastic waste accounting for basically a gigantic portion of this increase. So in 2016, the world produced 2.01 billion tons of municipal solid waste. Think about the last time you drove down the freeway and looked out your window and saw the shoulders, the sidewalks, it's the shoulders, lined with plastic debris. The problem with plastic waste is that it could take hundreds of years for it to decompose. And a lot of it doesn't even make it to what we call landfills, the places where we take out waste. So it could start to cause harm in the environment and for many of the animals and its habitats. By 2050, global waste production is projected to reach 3.4 billion tons, with plastic waste increasing 4 times. Question. Understanding that God has given to us this world as a gift, shouldn't we be better stewards of it? Especially if we have the opportunity to do that. I'm not even talking about the third world countries who are just trying to survive. But if we live in countries where we have the opportunities to take care of the environment that God created for us, He gave it to us, shouldn't we try to do that? One of the most significant signs of us not taking care of the world is how wasteful we are. It's not a big deal to us if we buy more than we need. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, Americans waste approximately 30 to 40% of their food supply. Americans waste 30 to 40% of their food supply. That means we go to Costco and 30 to 40% of what you buy just goes into the trash, which is equivalent to about 133 billion pounds of food a year. That is worth, full stop, $161 billion. We waste, on average, about 219 pounds of food per person per year. That means we waste more food than possibly we weigh. That's wasteful. That's not good. That means we use more than we don't use as much as we buy. That means we overspend, we overproduce, and we waste a ton. Is that biblical? Like him or hate him, but John Calvin, a reformer, had a very strong position on wastefulness and stewardship. He believed that wastefulness was a sin. In his writings, Calvin emphasized the importance of stewardship, which he defined as, listen to this definition, the responsible management of resources. He believed that God had given humans the responsibility for caring for the earth and its resources, and that they should use them to promote the common good and serve the needs of others. Now, it was almost brought to a religious level in Calvin's day, which we also have to be careful, but we need to be diligent. A Christian's position on how to treat the environment shouldn't be based on the idea of climate change. We shouldn't be looking at the world and going, everything's going to burn. We need to save it. No. This is a world given to us by God, and we should be honoring it because it's God's creation. We aren't worshiping creation. We worship God by using the resources he gave to us wisely. Look, I know that many of us, we like big cars that guzzle lots of gas, and we look at a lot of, especially the conservative Christians, they look at the liberals and they drive their gigantic SUVs that drive 10 miles per gallon. And they look at him and laugh and say, oh, I'm guzzling gas. But hold on. Are you wasting resources? Even if we were to say that gas does nothing to the environment, there's still a limited amount of it, right? You could have a better car, a car that takes less fuel, but you don't. You waste resources. I am convinced that in Calvin's Geneva, most people would be driving either electric cars or hybrids because it's less wasteful. That's the whole idea. That's the only reason. Not because we're going to save the world. No, because we want to take care of the environment and we don't want to be wasteful. We have to be careful in all of this, though, because the fact of the matter is that so many so-called green technologies, even batteries, aren't really all that green, and they're not all that humane even. What we should do is honor God by doing what we can to not make his creation into a dumpster. I'd like to finish with this thought. Over the past few years, I've spent a lot of time in Ukraine. Ukraine is by no way a rich country. In fact, it's in a war right now, and things aren't doing that well. But one of the things that you would notice there, that there isn't that much trash, definitely not as much as in America, laying around on the streets and in the cities. Why? Well, Ukrainians started, look, there is some problems. There's some problems with waste, but particularly with the streets, there's an attempt to make it look nice. How? They started doing this thing with putting up signs on the streets, and it says, "Thank you for clean sidewalks." All for an effort to try to encourage people not to litter. And guess what? Interestingly enough, it works. They didn't shove propaganda down people's throats. And they also didn't laugh at it and say, oh, this is such a terrible idea. No. There's just a basic idea of let's take care of the environment that we live in. I believe that the plastic on the sides of the roads is, number one, the result of habitual overabundance, and number two, the result of carelessness to our environment. I think God wants us to be careful to not get into any of those problems. And lastly, caring for the environment is not a liberal thing, okay? Just like trying to help the poor is not a liberal thing, and justice and the rule of law is not a conservative thing. We're Christians. We believe in things because God tells us what to do. Don't let political parties hijack what belongs to God. If our political leaders do things right, we should celebrate it. If they do something wrong, they should be able to hear from us about it. But these things do not belong to politicians. These are God's things. They belong to God, and let's keep them there. So, be prudently frugal, care for your environment. Don't buy into any climate religion. We're doing this because we love God. Let's take care of the world that we live in. It's basic. It doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm Christian, therefore I'm conservative, therefore I drive a gas guzzler. Or I'm liberal because I love people and therefore I'm going to save this planet. No. We do it because we honor God. Let's find out the best way to do that. And let's be mindful of that. Not because we're trying to win somebody over, but because we do it for God. Thank you. Blessings.